Assassin's Creed Brotherhood is a game I hold very near and dear to my heart, a cornerstone of my childhood experience and arguably the best Assassin's Creed game to have ever been made. I remember the story being amazing, the parkour being more refined, and the city of Rome to be absolutely gorgeous. I wanted to come back to this game years later and see if those feelings have since deteriorated or if they have stayed. I'll be mostly looking at the story aspect of things, but also touching gameplay and systems as well. I also think it's important to say that I've always been biased to the Ezio games, so take that as you will. But with that, let's just dive right into it. No waiting needed, so let's do this. The game starts out with a simple retelling of the previous game when Desmond and the gang were found at their hideout. Desmond narrates the events that have led up to Brotherhood starting with the first game. And if any of you are wondering why I didn't cover the first game, it's simply because I just did not want to. Anyways, we also get to see little bits and pieces of Ezio battling with an unknown figure in which we will find out soon who he is. I kind of like this introduction. It gets you invested into the story. It makes you ask questions as to how Ezio got into this situation. How did he get new robes? Who is invading? Why is he going after this person? It is a good hook, and it's impressive how they honestly topped what they did in Assassin's Creed 2 when it comes to intros. That's a personal opinion of mine though. Then the game starts off with you controlling Ezio directly after the end of the previous game, directly after he talked to this mysterious figure and mentioned Desmond's name. What comes after this is something like a tutorial, but not. The reason I say this is because it's a very limited tutorial that essentially tells you how to use eagle vision, how to run and climb up walls, and how to fight and counterattack. Most of this is due to how simplistic the game really is, but also it helps make the moment feel more immersive and fluid. I get so tired when games constantly give you bubble prompts of telling you how to use its systems instead of doing something simple like Assassin's Creed or being more creative. Regardless, Ezio meets with Mario and hands him the Apple of Eden. I have a problem with this particular moment, but we'll get to that later. You parkour through Rome while Mario stumbles, runs into, and falls at every moment you try to pass him because he is slow as hell, and finally you get to the top of the tower and the famous Ezio's family theme starts playing. This whole moment, even the placement of when the whole intro starts, is almost identical to the previous game, in more ways than one, in which we'll find out soon. After this, the scene cuts and now we're at the villa, taking in the scenery. The player is given 3 quests to complete in any order they want. 1, I do some target practice with a cannon. 2, help some random lady carry some flowers to a certain location. And 3, help the stable hand get a horse back to him. The best quest out of the 3 is for sure helping the lady with their flowers for the simple fact that Ezio spits some game and kind of rizzes her up. It adds to Ezio's overall character a ton, even though the interaction was quite meaningless. Especially when it is implied at the end of the quest that Ezio will get some the next day. And spoilers, the whole villa gets raided that following morning. My least favorite of the 3 quests though was the horse one. This dude asked Ezio to get control of his horse or else Mario's gonna kill him, but I shit you not, the horse was like 2 feet away. The man could have done it himself if he would just like walked, you know? I was just sprinting up and down this road a few times till the horse stopped running away. Honestly, the 2 quests I mentioned are very meaningless and didn't add a whole lot. The 3rd mission is essentially a tutorial for when you eventually use the cannon. This is why it was my least favorite. I just feel like these quests could have been cut. We could have skipped 2 when Ezio was letting the whole gang know what exactly happened in Rome during the second game. Yeah, those quests were filler. I'm not necessarily mad about it. It's just I would have preferred if we got straight to the point. Anyways, the other assassins question Ezio on why he chose to let Rodrigo live. And honestly, as we will see later, I start to question this decision as well, especially Machiavelli. What I don't like though is how Machiavelli just completely ignores what Ezio said about Minerva and meeting her. Considering this is a literal god that Ezio's talking to, you would think that he would be more engaged with that topic. Then the most jarring cut happens when we see Ezio get undressed and take a bath with Caterina joining him. God damn, I mean, am I right? But at the same time, it was so out of nowhere, I couldn't help but question what the whole point of it was. I understand it was to get the player character like close to Caterina, so when she inevitably gets captured shortly after this, the player has a reason to save her, but the player already has a reason to save her. She's part of the assassins. I guess at the end of the day, I really can't complain because she's bad, but you know. When Ezio wakes up from his magical night, he finds himself in the middle of a Borgia assault on Monte Regione. To keep this part short and simple, Ezio mans the cannons to defend the villa, engage in some simple combat, and eventually witness the death of Uncle Mario. Mario's death was so unnecessary in my eyes and kind of forced. The only reason he was killed is so Cesare gets a hold of the apple, and so Ezio has a reason to go after him, sort of a mimic of the second game. First, Mario should have never had the apple in the first place. It should have stayed with Ezio, or at least he should have hidden it somewhere safe. Second, it feels like they're retreading the same events like I mentioned when Ezio's brother and father were killed. Playing this game at the time of release, I thought nothing of it, but now it feels cheap. When you think about it, we never got that close to Mario in Assassin's Creed 2. This was the perfect opportunity to make that happen. But regardless, after that happens, Ezio gets shot as well. You help get your family into safety along with other civilians. Ezio then makes the decision to go after the Borgia and makes his way to Rome, but ultimately passes out on his horse. This brings us finally to the modern day. This makes me miss how the modern day was kind of handled back then. It had actual story that you could follow and had intense stakes to go with it. With the new games, I had no idea what was going on. The gang is in modern day Monteriggioni because Ezio later in his life hid the Apple of Eden somewhere within Italy with a key to this location, hopefully being in the area of Monteriggioni. This place is also an area where Abstergo isn't breathing down their neck. I think that's important to mention. I just want to take a moment and tell you how much of an ass Sean is. Don't get me wrong, I sometimes love his witty comebacks and overall tone, but other times it is so over the top and can come across as annoying. I do love Lucy and Rebecca though. We then see a side effect of the Animus with the ghost of Ezio appearing in front of Desmond. You follow this ghost until... After this, the game plays out like you're doing an Assassin Tomb in Assassin's Creed 2. If I'm honest, I love these types of levels in Brotherhood, mostly because the parkour, although annoying in parts, of course, is so much better than it was in the last game. I can't tell you how many times I raged at the tombs because I kept falling due to the input in my controller not matching what was happening in game. I mean, if you don't believe me, go watch the Assassin's Creed 2 video. There was a couple moments in that where I genuinely raged. It's funny if you want to laugh. In Brotherhood, I was happy to do all of the Romulus tombs. They were interesting, fun, and didn't overstay its welcome. I will get to those later when we go through them all. Little side note, kind of after writing the script, I didn't really go through them all, mostly because when you do, they kind of look the same, they kind of play the same, which isn't bad. I do like the parkour aspect of it and the focus on it. It's just, if I mentioned one, then I pretty much mentioned all. So just keep that in mind. During the puzzle underneath Monteriggioni, you get to hear some banter between Desmond and Lucy. Very much so trying to get the two characters closer and build upon what they did in the first game. Keep this in the back of your mind because once we get to the end of the game, there is a problem with this that is either my own doing or because something was lost in translation within dialogue. We also continue to see the ghost of Ezio as side effect of the Animus, and at the end we make it to the assassin mausoleum that was in the second game where you would collect the armor of Altair. While letting Sean and Rebecca in, you notice a pyramid symbol. When pressing Y and going into Eagle Vision, there's some important numbers you look at: 1419, 1420, 1421. And these numbers will be explained at the end game. I do wish though that during the middle of my playthrough they would give more hints as to what those numbers mean, and once you hit that particular moment you would go like, oh, I knew it, that's what it meant. But it doesn't happen. It just kind of comes at you at the end of the game. But you know, maybe it does this in the middle and I just missed it, and if that is the case, then I would urge you guys to please let me know in the comments below. I also think it's important to mention that I never exited the Animus once I was let loose within the game, not necessarily because of choice, like I like the modern day, but because I was so invested in Ezio and Rome and what was going on in the story, I didn't want to leave. And I think that's a plus if I'm honest. I think if you exit the Animus at any point, all you really do is explore Monteriggioni at night with a timer on how long you could stay out, which sucks. I mean, you get some lore bits here and there, but I mean, is it really worth it? At this point, we get put back into the Animus to see what happened to Ezio. It seems he was rescued on the road by a random assassin, which I believe was Machiavelli, and if I'm wrong, let me know, but Ezio was taken to Rome to heal with bandages all around his body. It's important to mention that at this point in the game, in terms of character growth, Ezio is at his lowest. Not necessarily rock bottom like in Assassin's Creed 2, but going from the top of his character growth at the end of AC2, which is realizing what it means to be an assassin, to being the mentor of the Brotherhood, and understanding what it means to lead and have people look up to him. So at the end of Assassin's Creed 2, he's like, okay, I know what I'm doing as an assassin, and I got to do this, this, and this. But after the attack on the villa, he's like, okay, I'm back at square one, and he has to rebuild himself again, but even higher. I hope that makes sense. I kind of wrote this weird in the script, but just bear with me. I am glad that they made this choice with character growth instead of what most games do, which is stripping the character down entirely and rebuilding them again throughout the story. Spider-Man 2. Yeah, we'll get to that video another time. Going back to this game, this is when you were first introduced to the open world of Rome. A lot of people had problem with the one city instead of visiting multiple, like in the previous games. I don't get this criticism. With one city, Rome feels like a character within this story that can change and grow during your playtime. Bringing in the same mechanics from the previous game in the villa, you can renovate Rome and change it as you play. Buying shops, repairing aqueducts, rebuilding landmarks, and doing these net you passive income that you can collect anytime you visit a bank. It's very important that you buy and repair and take down as many Borgia towers as early as possible. The reason being is because this makes the game a little bit easier later. You won't have to worry about money and buying better armor, or there's sometimes missions that gate you depending on how much money you have. And it also gives you access to Romulus tombs, which you wouldn't have been able to have access before if you didn't repair those aqueducts. Also, it's just fun to renovate stuff, so why not do it? It kind of changes the scenery. Almost forgot, you also get discounts if you renovate more and more places. I am also pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, that there is more NPCs that kind of do stuff and spawn in if you renovate, but that's just my brain talking and what I think I saw. It may not have been the case. You just get connected to Rome overall, whether that is parkouring around the Colosseum, renovating the slums on the outskirts of the city, getting into fights in random places, being on the rooftops and seeing how big the city actually is. So many things to love here. Also, it takes away the loading screens from going city to city, which is very nice. But you know what sucks? Getting immediately sucked into a tailing mission for your first time in the open world. Assassin's Creed is infamous for their tailing missions, and I forgot how annoying they can be. By playing the new school games, they're less prevalent, spoiling me pretty much. So going from that to this is something. Thank God we aren't playing a Black Flag, because about 70% of that game is pure tailing missions. But anyways, after tailing the guards for a while, you encounter combat, defending an innocent bystander that was praying to his lover. She was hanged unfairly by an individual that is lazily hanging out at the home on the hilltop. This assassination target is also a character within the multiplayer mode, and now that I'm thinking about it, there are a lot of assassination targets that are involved in multiplayer. These targets very much have no impact in the story other than to give you set assassination missions. I don't hate it, I just wish there was more meaning behind it. I guess the reason for this mission or missions is for the player to get more comfortable with the mechanics, getting more comfortable with the environment and using it to your advantage. Going along with more tutorials, the next mission is Ezio walking with Machiavelli to purchase weapons and armor at the blacksmith. I mean, this goes without saying, it's pretty important to keep up to date with armor that gets updated with each sequence that passes, just like AC2. Eventually, you'll be surrounded by so many guards that it is a guarantee that you'll get hit. That is until you get the armor of Brutus. Weapons, though, you can kind of get away with not buying that. I mean, the combat is easy as it is, so don't worry about that. This is also the mission where you get told the whole basis of the reason why you're in Rome: to stop the Borgia family from starving the citizens of Rome from getting true freedom. This also comes with getting the apple back. What I don't like though is when Machiavelli tells us how each member of the family acts. Why not just show us when we deal with them? Not to mention, we didn't need the explanation of why Cesare is evil. Same with his sister. It just felt weird. We kind of already got that vibe when he first came to Monte Regioni. You didn't need to explain it again. Here's when we ride through the city with Machiavelli and discuss whether or not killing Rodrigo would have solved anything. At the beginning of the video, I mentioned that I disagree with this, but after now completing the game and continuing to write this script, I've changed my mind. And as you all know, the main antagonist of the game is Rodrigo's son, Cesare. So if we were to kill Rodrigo in the first game, his son would just rise to power and the same events would happen here and probably make things much worse. The only thing that matters to Ezio is to make sure that the apple is safe and out of the hands of the Borgia. I think that what we see here is him, or Ezio, being a leader and taking his people, or Machiavelli in this case's word, and doing what needs to be done. Not for the sake of himself like the previous game, but for the sake of his allies. Selflessness is the name of the game, and the lesson is taught throughout this game. At least it's how I interpreted it. If you took it another way, let me know. It'd be pretty interesting discussion. Regardless, our next task is to get a hold of Vatican mail and take it to a certain area in which Machiavelli told us to go. In reality, we're attacked by individuals who are dressed up in wolf clothing, and these guys are known as the followers of Romulus, whom you will encounter frequently in the Romulus tombs. These guys aren't very difficult at all, and I was surprised at how little you fought them within these said tombs. As I said previously, these tombs are spread all across Rome, and in some parts you have to liberate a said area and renovate certain things in order to access them. These tombs are super fun to complete, especially the ones where you have to chase people down. Surprisingly enough, the parkour puzzles are just as fun to complete, and they aren't nearly as frustrating as the tombs in AC2, simply because the parkour is refined and it's better. When you complete these tombs, you collect these Romulus scrolls which unlock the armor of Brutus, very similar to what you need to do to collect the armor of Altair. And to summarize all the tombs in one go, they're fun and better than AC2. In AC2, parkour was less refined, so this game, with the refined parkour, is great side content. This first tomb was very memorable to me, if I am honest, which brings a sense of positive bias. I vividly remember always turning on the water valves to break the water underneath, parkouring across flaming surfaces, parkouring through the closed gates, trying to find a way through. I think the reason why I like this tomb a lot is because it's simply testing your ability to parkour at least semi-well. Nothing else really to it. Of course, later on things will get a bit more complicated when you complete more of them. What's interesting is afterwards Machiavelli explains that these followers of Romulus are getting support from the Borgia. As far as I know, besides like one tomb that shows but doesn't explain, the game never gives you an understanding as to why the Borgia are supporting these guys. What's the gain here? Why are they even here? These simple things would have been good to understand. Even if this stuff is in the codex, it would be better just to say something in game to curb the curiosity. This is a little thing that would have added quite a bit to the game and its mysteries. This is also when we get introduced to fast travel by taking these underground tunnels. By the way, these things are very useful and more useful than you might realize. Trust me, it helps so much when you have a mission on the very far end of the map and you're the opposite of it. It happens way more than you think. Afterwards is when you get greeted with the assassin hideout. I never visited here other than coming back to the blacksmith and such for the quests they give for weapons, and you also get a discount. I think a larger discount. This place is largely unimportant other than the gang meeting with each other to discuss next moves for next missions. So the next conversation with Machiavelli is kind of a head scratcher to me. He explains that he was unaware that the apple was taken and that Caterina was taken. For someone as well informed as Machiavelli is, it is so fucking odd that he's just oblivious to what's going on. Like, how do you not know your most prized artifact is gone? He also insists that this is the time to strike the Borgia, even though the assassin mercenaries are ensnared in a conflict with the French. The courtesans have an unreliable leader, and the thieves are just not responding. This whole conversation with Machiavelli makes him seem like an idiot, but he isn't. This just doesn't feel like his character. He is so headstrong in getting the job done, even though we don't have the tools to do so. He even later on insists that Ezio not worry about Caterina and just assassinate the Borgia. It just doesn't seem like he's an assassin, and there was no reason for him to be opposing Ezio like this. There was no clear reason to have his character go this route. Later on, he doesn't even have a character growth. Regardless, this brings us to the next task of trying to unite and create the Brotherhood in Rome. So we visit the mercenaries, the courtesans, and the thieves, similar to what we did in Assassin's Creed 2, but it takes much less time. The first mission I went to was the one that dealt with the courtesans. Here we find out that the owner was kidnapped and is being held ransom by slave traders. We are told and required to collect enough money to give to these people in order to free the owner. What I don't understand is why we need to negotiate with these guys. Why is it required? Why not just sneak into the boat and assassinate them? The funny thing is, when you do gain enough money and give it to them, they just steal the money and you have to kill the leader anyways. The sole reason for this was to get Claudia to be the leader of the courtesans, which makes sense. Keep in mind that I think having her as the leader is perfect, but the events that lead up to those events were executed poorly. It makes no sense for Ezio to negotiate with the damn slave traders. Taking them out stealthily and having the old leader be killed in the process by the slave trader, like say Ezio got caught accidentally. It would have been much better in my eyes. But this does bring a sort of sibling rivalry between Ezio and Claudia. Ezio believes that Claudia shouldn't even be near the city because of the events that will go on. He doesn't want her to get hurt. In reality, Claudia can take care of herself. This brings character growth to Ezio, as we will see later on. That is quite interesting, as well as character growth to Claudia. I love this bit of the game. Ezio's afraid to lose more family members. It makes sense, but he needs to understand that they can take care of themselves. He just has to trust. In between the time of doing that mission and the next, I took some time to take in the sights of Rome and engage in some open world content that the game offers, most of which had to do with renovating the shops and taking down Borgia towers. I just found the renovation system within this game to be addicting and fun, even though there isn't much to it. The city starts to look better, you get discounts, you'll get more passive income. It genuinely feels like the city's reacting to you. It feels important because Ezio is making a quality difference to Rome with the assassin influence rising. Believe it or not, I also found the Borgia towers to be fun as well. Sometimes it felt like a puzzle because certain Borgia captains will be cowards and run away. Because of that, you need to look around and see if there's a valid way to take them out and fast and stealthily. Otherwise, they will run into their base and you'll have to wait a solid amount of time. It also reveals the fog of war that goes around the map. Some people will be annoyed by the sync points in the game to reveal the map, an Ubisoft thing, so to speak, but this level of difficulty makes things interesting. You have to work on renovating the city and revealing the map. Unfortunately, for some reason, later games from Ubisoft overuse this and do it in every single game outside of Assassin's Creed, which is what caused people to hate them, in my opinion. The next quest I hit is with La Volpe and the thieves. La Volpe throws a pretty serious allegation about Machiavelli out of nowhere. I always thought Machiavelli was suspicious for no reason every time I played this game. I mean, probably because he told us to assassinate the Borgia and not even worry about Caterina. I mean, there's certain things in this game that you'll see that's like, okay, that's a little weird, but never to the degree of like, hey, this guy's gonna betray me. I mean, it even happened in Assassin's Creed 2, but I never thought that this dude was, you know, an asshole. Also, it's fucking hilarious how Ezio delivers his line. It seems like he's so over La Volpe shit.
Machiavelli may not please all tastes, but he is an assassin, not a traitor.
Pretty much he says that Machiavelli was spotted conversing with the Borgia about something and doesn't want to work with them anymore. We even see this said accusation that La Volpe gave. Machiavelli was seen conversing and exchanging something that seemed suspicious. If you took a shot for how many times I've said suspicious in the last 2 minutes, you're gonna be plastered. But for some reason, La Volpe's thieves come out of nowhere and try to kill the Borgia guards. Are they trying to reveal themselves on if they were spying on Machiavelli? Also, why didn't Machiavelli just walk back and explain himself to us? He couldn't have walked far and must have witnessed the thieves go after the Borgia. Anyways, this causes one of the thieves to be cornered and you have to save him. I mean, it is kind of annoying that all of this could have been avoided if you know the thieves weren't even there. This is also where you kind of learn social stealth. It isn't a very good tutorial, if I'm honest. It's very bland, even though I guess the games think you've played the previous game, so they didn't put much effort here, which is understandable, I guess. You could totally play this game standalone, but you won't get nearly as much out of it or understand it as much unless you've played AC 1 and 2. This goes hand in hand with the awareness system as well. The third place we go to now is to meet with Bartolomeo. He is a character that will seem confident on the outside, but is very anxious deep within himself. An example of this is when he tells us the fight with the French is going well, even though when we talk to his wife, she says otherwise. They're about to be cooked here in a bit, and it's our job to help Bartolomeo. It is a nice change of pace to meet with a character that doesn't immediately tell you what needs to be done and make you their bitch. Although Bartolomeo's wife does this, he himself doesn't, which is nice. I have no idea if that made sense, but we're gonna roll with it. The first section of this mission is essentially a glorified tower objective where you will kill the captain, climb the tower, light it on fire. The interesting parts come after though. That is after I lose all my fucking money because I didn't understand the objectives for the fighting ring in the Mercenaries Guild. I hate my life. Around this time is when the Christina missions become available. Before we get started, for some reason after I completed 2 Christina missions, no more showed up, or at least I never noticed them again. If it was the former, I would be super disappointed because those missions are the best in the game. Christina's storyline was something I wish was more fleshed out because Ezio just dips in the second game. I do think they should have included these main story missions within that game. It feels weird that it isn't. Regardless, this memory involves Ezio's first meeting with Christina and her immediately rejecting him. Just seeing Ezio again gives me a warm feeling. Even though I didn't necessarily have a great time with Assassin's Creed 2, I do miss the characters and overall vibe. Also, seeing Ezio's brother again was something emotional. Seeing Ezio so innocent and charmful makes you reflect on how much character growth went on in the last game. It makes you realize how much time passed. But there is one thing in this mission that makes you scratch your head at least a little bit and think maybe Ezio used to be a weirdo. You stalk Christina because she rejected you. So yeah. Then we get to see the whole reason why that fight at the beginning of AC2 started. It was because this motherfucker was trying to, Yeah. Some of the best parts about this game are when Ezio's personality, past, and so forth are explored. Not necessarily exploring the assassins, just his character in general. Anyways, this ends with Ezio saving Christina and her giving him a second chance. Going back to the actual game and what's going on in present time. Remember La Volpe accused Machiavelli of being a traitor? Machiavelli isn't a traitor. Surprise. He's just being a cheeky little shit. His contacts happen to be city guards and people that are part of the Borgia. You know what would have caused this fiasco to not happen? If Machiavelli just told us what we were doing? I mean, Ezio does it all the time. Why can't Machiavelli? Whatever, I guess. We finally get to one of my favorite missions, and fun fact, when I was younger, I hated this mission because I couldn't get past it. It was a skill issue, I was like 9, but our objective, according to Machiavelli, is to finish the job and assassinate Rodrigo and Cesare Borgia. But the problem is, Caterina is still held captive. You can't really do everything at once, which is what we'll see soon, because Machiavelli also states that assassinating the Borgia is more important than Caterina. We really need to keep an eye on this guy, like, fuck's sake. I also just love how much of a bitch Caterina is as well. The thing you do most in this mission is parkour though. Just like, it's a simple mission. But if you get spotted, you have to restart the entire thing, which is what I hate in games like this. Like, I understand why it's a thing, but Jesus, man. Here you also get to find out that Cesare and Lucrezia are siblings. Incest. I always thought that this was a creative liberty by Ubisoft, or at least I thought that's what they were doing. But if you dig deeper within like Wikipedia and stuff like that for the Borgia family, it was an actual thing, or at least a rumor that was spread during the time. While doing research, it was also stated that she married a dude named Giovanni Sforza, as in Caterina's husband, I think. So maybe that explains the intense hatred between the two characters. Anyways, this was a huge rumor that was going on during the time, which turned out to be true. The important thing here though is Cesare promises that he will make Lucrezia his queen. This will give her false hope, as we'll see later on. After this, we see Lucrezia do her little jealous talk with Caterina, which ends with Lucrezia swinging a metal rod at Caterina's leg, which of course makes it so she can't walk. So Ezio has to carry her throughout the entire building. And even though this is my favorite mission because of the meaning behind it with Ezio's priorities, I hate the gameplay side of it. Carry Caterina through the building with countless encounters of enemies. You have to set her down every single damn time you get into a fight. It just drags the mission out for longer than it should have been. If they kept the encounters down just a bit, it would have helped out tremendously. We also get to see that Lucrezia is having an affair on her brother with some random dude. Here is when we get to see the dynamic of the family as well. It very much seems like Lucrezia is attention starved. This leads me to believe as to why she pursued her brother as well as other people. She never has an actual conversation with her father throughout the entire game, and the only conversations she has with her brother are when he's not doing something important, which doesn't happen often, and she even says this. It kind of makes you feel bad for Lucrezia in a way, sort of. She's still of course a horrible person, but you can see how it came to be that way. The family dynamic of the Borgia is so incredibly well done in this game, but it's awful. It's filled with jealousy, power trips, and secrets. Oh, and by the way, you have to carry her to the jail in which Caterina's in because she is the only person that has the key. Why we didn't just take the key from her when we met her and interrupted that whole thing with her affair, I don't know. She alerted the guards anyway, so there was absolutely no point in carrying her, but like I said though, we carry Caterina out to tell her to meet us at the assassin hideout. And here's honestly where I absolutely can't stand Machiavelli. He says the mission was a waste because no Borgia was killed, when Caterina is sitting right in front of him. He also has the audacity to say no offense. I have no idea if Ubisoft's goal here was for us not to like Machiavelli. It very much doesn't seem like that's the case, and it makes me feel weird. Such an odd character choice, and it doesn't seem very assassin-like. After this though is when we are introduced to the main selling point of the game, recruiting our Brotherhood, getting novices to join our cause by helping them not get their ass beat by guards. And I love this system, and thankfully it is brought over to Revelations. It makes stealth and combat much more interesting. It also feels like you are genuinely making a difference in the city, creating an army to fight back against the oppressors. It's a great next step for Ezio in his journey. It makes sense that Ezio's next stage as an assassin would be to become the mentor of the assassins in Rome. This next mission though is the same thing as the beginning of the game, assassinating the characters that are available in the online mode. All you do is follow the courtesan's direction and eventually you will take him out. This mission has no real relevance to the story and was only a means to, I guess, promote the online mode and its characters. It feels cheap. If it doesn't hold any weight to the overall story, then there is no reason to include it. It just doesn't make sense. But hey, this is Ubisoft we're talking about, so I mean, take that as you will. After completing this mission, I started to hear a little boy crying. At first I was like, oh shit, maybe this is a hidden side quest because the main mission marker was just a little bit further, but the crying was so close. So I was like, oh, what's going on? And then it became more and more annoying. His little fake crying was absolutely horrendous to listen to. I feel like an asshole saying this, but it goes on for far too long. Regardless, it does end up being a main mission. The boy explains that his mom was captured by some guards and he booked it and ran. Our job now is to save his mom and free the rest of the slaves that are captured. And guess what? It's another multiplayer character assassination target mission. It's getting egregious. We've had 3 of them now, but we get introduced to another type of mission in the game, Leonardo's War Machine missions. These I didn't do much besides the first mission that you do in regard to the machine gun, I think it was. I mean, they're okay. I just don't like the fact that the mission makes it so you must be hidden throughout the entire thing. Then afterwards, it's an uninspiring on-rail shooting section that has no place in Assassin's Creed. There's a bit of text that says if you do these missions, it will unlock rewards for Leo to give to you, but even if you didn't do the missions, you can still get the climbing glove, double hidden blade, and poison dart. So I don't know what it meant by that. Otherwise, to get those new upgrades, you have to sit at a designated spot to ask Leonardo for upgrades. I do wish there were more moments with him in the actual story, just like AC2. He was like Ezio's best friend in the game. To not have that here feels very odd. It's like they said to themselves, hey, we need to add Leo. I guess we can make him just a glorified blacksmith in the game. Next is saying goodbye to Katerina, like forever. I find this a bit odd. Yes, they needed to include her in the game because otherwise it would have been weird if she was just ignored. But I feel like this is even worse. She was just cast aside and forgotten about because her sole purpose in the game was to be the damsel in distress for Ezio and for her to be a casual, I guess, interest in him. It feels like a punch in the face to her character. I have no other way of explaining it. Regardless, she screams victory to the assassins and rides off into the city to never be seen again in the series. Okay, cool. The next mission, rescue a dude named, I'm gonna butcher this name, Egidio Troche. I probably butchered that so bad. Who I guess does deals with the banker. If we get closer to the banker, we can cripple the Borgia economically and hopefully draw Cesare out. It makes sense. What sucks though is in this mission it is explicitly an escort mission. It isn't a hard one per se, more so annoying. You make your way to a designated spot around the city. In each one you go to, guards are around and you have to make it to the next one. This happens too many times for my liking. I understand this is a small gripe, but anytime I roll my eyes at something in the game, I will mention it here. You then give the homie a few thousand florins, follow him via rooftops and occasionally kill some baddies up there, climb the Pantheon, which is the coolest part here, and then air assassinate a guard. So you're able to deliver the payment to the banker yourself. And I love this part solely because you get to climb the Pantheon and air assassinate a guard from the roof. Pure assassin type stuff. It just screams it. I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but I love how these missions in the game aren't generic assassination contract stuff like in the first and second game for majority of the time. Here you have a goal that you're trying to accomplish, and to do that, it isn't necessary to just start killing targets. You're finding a way to bring down the Borgia as a whole. Here it is economically by killing the banker, but getting to that point is a bunch of steps to pull it off. Just like after this, we have to disguise ourselves as a guard and deliver the goods ourselves. Kind of like a heist, like you're setting up in GTA 5. You have to do these little quests up until you get to the big part, and then you pull it off. I don't know, I like the process of that more so than just being like, hey, kill this person, and then after that, you're done. What reminds me of that is more so Assassin's Creed Unity. I love the way you can approach different aspects of assassinating and target, but I like the planning ahead of it. The fun ends there, though. You aren't given a waypoint to go to. You have to follow the shitty directions the other guards behind you give you. Even if you are going the right direction, if you aren't going down the right street, they will yell at you and it will risk a conflict to start and you will be desynced. It's annoying and I don't know who thought this was a good mechanic to have. It drags the mission down incredibly. Even having a fade to black to meeting the blanker would have been way better than this. It's generally agreed upon but that this was probably the worst mission in the game. If it isn't and you find or you think another one is, please leave it in the comments down below. Regardless, we get to the banker, and now it is social stealth time. Hiring courtesans, hiding in the crowd and haystacks. It's a good time. We also get a cutscene. We find out that there is turmoil in the Borgia family. Cesare wants to conquer all of Italy, whereas Rodrigo doesn't. He thinks it will create instability and make everything that they've worked towards fall apart. He is the Pope. They technically have all the power here, so why conquer? I thought this was pretty interesting, and it gives an insight on the family dynamic. And after assassinating the banker, we get an interesting confession. He states that he doesn't regret a single thing he's done, mostly because he believes that he gave the people what they wanted, although he pretty much caused most of Rome to go broke just so he could throw parties and clap some cheeks. Not much to read into here, but I find it bizarre that he sincerely believes that he's what he says. Maybe he just is oblivious to what he's doing, or he just believes his own lies. Going forward, I still find it hilarious how Bartolomeo is a bumbling idiot, or maybe he just doesn't want Ezio to think he is. Either one, because he says we have the French retreating, and not even a few seconds later an attack happens at the base of operations. Like, okay. This leads us to defend the base while simultaneously lowering the gates so they can't get inside. And after this, the leader of the French mentions that they have captured Bartolomeo's wife, which leads us to our next mission, saving her. And in order to do so, we waltz right in, and it's almost mandatory to go in guns blazing with no stealth. I have a few mixed feelings on this. I understand that there are probably other missions that do this, but this one specifically, it's just so out of left field. It doesn't feel assassin-y, but then again, I feel like there are other missions that are just like this earlier, and I just didn't care to kind of pay attention. Anyways, moving on. You kill about 20 soldiers until the mission just abruptly ends without a resolution until you go to a designated mission spot to pick it back up. And I've noticed that this happens a lot in the game, and I'm not a fan. Just make it so the mission runs seamlessly. I doubt anyone would care. It would make things more streamlined, and it would make more sense, especially this, because Ezio is supposed to disguise himself as a French guard. It would make much more sense to have a little cutscene where Ezio grabs the clothes from the guard and then puts them on like other missions here. Instead, you make your way to a random ass spot and then disguise yourself. It's weird. Adding on to this, I ran into some glitches where it tells you to take care of the guards before you approach them, but when I do, after it gives me the notification, it desinks me because I went too far away from all of the other mercenaries. It very much sucked the fun out of the mission that honestly didn't make sense in the first place. But after this, to save Bartolomeo's wife, you have to sneak into the base, kill some guards to lift the gate, then after this find and assassinate the Baron. The confession that happens isn't anything to write home about either. It doesn't fit within the overall story and holds no weight for Ezio to go forward. This whole quest to find Bartolomeo's wife was just odd and not needed in the overall narrative, in my opinion. It would have been better for him to have a different kind of narrative, such as maybe rebuilding the mercenary influence of Rome and have dedicated missions getting close to those individuals. I think that would have been a lot better, though I will say after saving Bartolomeo's wife, things become kind of wholesome where Bartolomeo gives credit to Ezio for coming up with the plan to save his wife. Ezio interrupts and says the credit falls with Bartolomeo too, so I guess makes his wife more thankful towards him. It was very sweet, and kind of after reading the entire script, it kind of makes more sense now because, you know, once Ezio kind of gains the trust of Bartolomeo's wife and kind of brings them together, so to speak, it makes it so Bartolomeo is more loyal. But even then, we've already done that in Assassin's Creed 2, so it feels like we're retreading the same exact steps or something along those lines. I think that's where my dislike of these missions lie. It's a lot of retreading past things that we've done in Assassin's Creed 2. But anyway, speaking of very sweet, not really, we get another memory of Christina. This takes place right after the unaliving of his family. He tells her that he needs help getting their bodies off of ropes so they can get to a semi-proper burial. Christina agrees to help, and we are on our way. This mission involves a lot of avoiding of guards and making your way towards Ezio's family. He finds out later that his family is at a dockside waiting to be taken care of. Ezio and Christina make their way to the bodies, put their bodies on a little boat, and then they both have an intimate moment together. Ezio expresses his desire to leave the city because of what happened, but also asks Caterina if she would like to come with him. Of course, she disagrees because her family, she doesn't want to leave them. I also imagine that considering the last game, her family is important and powerful, which means if she goes missing and is linked with Ezio, they will both be in trouble. Ezio then gives her a necklace to remember him. This mission was much needed for both characters, especially since you can tell that he was deeply in love with her in Assassin's Creed 2, and after that first section in the game, she was never seen again. So seeing her here in this mission is great. I love seeing the chemistry between them. It's heartbreaking watching these scenes again because of the chemistry and knowing how much Ezio grows through the years and still remembers her. But since I didn't do all of the Christina missions, I think it's best to explain those missions anyways. Since I don't have footage, I can't show that. So enjoy the sights of Rome while I do that, while I explain. Also, these missions are important, which is why I'm mentioning them. I think that goes without saying. Anyways, the next mission is Ezio surprising Christina in Florence after a short period of time. I mean, it's been 2 years, so maybe not that short of a time. Here we find out that in this time, Christina was pretty much forced to marry someone else, especially since she thought she wouldn't see Ezio again. Low-key, this wouldn't have happened if she would just gone with Ezio when he asked, but you know, whatever. What sucks though is that you have to save her bitch-ass fiance. He was gambling and owes people money, so we have to bail him out. If we had the option to just not, that would have been great. He got himself in this position. You know, Christina could just leave, come with Ezio, but that's just copium. But all is good because we pretty much yell at the man and ask if he's going to treat Christina right and if he loves her. After he pleads that he does, Ezio says, "Okay, homie, but keep in mind, I'll beat your ass if you gamble again." And Ezio makes his way back to Christina, makes out with her, and then lets her know that he'll be a good husband because he made sure that he would. She questions him, but the mission ends like abruptly, and I love it, honestly. It's so simple, and you really get to see the love Ezio has for Christina. You actually feel something here. You feel bad that Ezio just really didn't have a choice in the matter. He had to leave to survive, and to do that, it would mean leaving his love for Christina behind. Now I'm repeating myself, but damn, it hits hard. What hits harder though, and it connects to the last mission, and which is why I love it so much, is this next one takes place during the carnival in AC2. And keep in mind, this has been 8 years since the last mission. Ezio finds out that Christina is with her husband from Leonardo. After following her for some time, Ezio kisses her, and it's worth mentioning that everyone has a mask here, if you remember. So with that in mind, she thinks it's her husband, not Ezio. And I have no idea how you just couldn't tell right off the bat if it's that person. I mean, a mask doesn't hide you that much. What happened to instinct and how a person sounds, right? Regardless, after realizing it's Ezio, she's pissed. She yells at Ezio saying he left her in that alley after kissing her and never returned like she hoped. She didn't love her now husband. She loved Ezio, and she tells him that. It was a heart-wrenching scene that I wish was in the base game of AC2, and after this, she just leaves, saying that he had a second chance and wasted it. And do y'all remember when Firenze was getting taken over by that one church dude, Savonarola? It was kind of a forgettable section of AC2 in my memory. Well, we're here now, and the memory consists of encountering Christina while this is going on. And after seeing her husband dying in the street, he tells Ezio that she is in danger. Ezio looks for her. He fights off some men attacking her, but it's too late. He carries her to a safe place, but she isn't gonna make it. He tells her to stay with him, but she pulls out the necklace he gave her, saying that she was always with him and that she wishes that they could have had a second chance. And this broke me watching this scene again. Just the regret on both of their faces, knowing that they were meant for each other, but it just couldn't happen. It would put Christina in danger constantly. It just makes you think how much grief Ezio had to go through. With his final words, he tells her to rest in peace. And these missions were just a nice touch to the game that was very much needed, considering he just up and leaves in AC2 and that's it. We needed more, and I'm very thankful we got it here at least. These missions are a must play when you play AC Brotherhood, and it's a shame I just wasn't paying attention and only played 2 of those missions. Please don't be like me. Anyways, let's go back to the main story. When we stopped by to say hello to La Volpe, we discussed her mission to meet Lucrezia's other lover that we saw at the beginning of the game. Also, he proceeds to accuse Machiavelli of treason again. He explains that someone warned Rodrigo to stay away from the Castello. And I don't get this skepticism because Machiavelli has been non-stop pestering Ezio to assassinate Rodrigo. It just wouldn't make any damn sense for Machiavelli to suddenly start warning Rodrigo out of nowhere. It seems like a writing oversight, and even then, the plot thread doesn't run all that long. It makes me think, why put it in the game at all if it's that short? I get making your allies come together, that makes sense, but there could have been better ways to do so other than this. Immediately after, the Borgias suddenly show up because they find the location of the thief's spies and accuse Machiavelli again because he asked about the spies earlier. And I'm just going to get this out of the way now. Machiavelli is not the traitor. It was purely coincidence, and I hate this. I feel like if you really wanted this plot to go anywhere, why not make him the traitor? Why not just go balls to the wall? It would have been more memorable. Making this go nowhere just hurts. It was a waste of missions that didn't hold any weight to the overall narrative. Even then, when the game was trying to make me think he was a traitor, it didn't work. It just didn't make any sense with the overall story because they didn't leave those breadcrumbs earlier in the story. They didn't make it believable enough, and it sucks. It really does. Anyway, back to Lucrezia's little fling. Well, we find out he's due to be poisoned at a crucifixion reenactment, and after this you go on a long tailing mission on horse and on foot. Thought this one was kind of engaging because you have to use your assassins a lot here, mostly because there will be a lot of guards, and they will be alerted if you're anywhere near them, and it will fail the mission. So being in high places is a must here. You then climb to the top of the Colosseum and are timed in a parkour arena while you descend to the ground, trying to avoid those said guards to get a disguise so you can get closer to the target. The annoying part is that the parkour just wouldn't work half the time and would cause me to desync from the mission. Also, when you finally get to the reenactment and it's time for you to move to your next positions, like it happens constantly, it isn't obvious the first couple of times it does it where you're supposed to go. And Assassin's Creed has always had problems with this, at least in the earlier titles. Lots of jank in missions that happen. In newer titles, it's just a lot of bloat, so you like trade negatives for negatives. It's honestly disappointing. Regardless, we get the key to the Castello after a bit of persuasive talking to Lucrezia's little fling. Pretty much you just rescue him, take him to the doctor, and he just talks. So there's that. And after this mission ends, we see the same dude that helped Ezio and his family escape during the villa section of the Borgia attack. For some reason though, the thief runs and we're forced to chase after him. And after catching him, we get a letter that indicates that he is the traitor. The dude that had no fucking role in the game other than that specific point. This causes us to parkour to Machiavelli's location as soon as possible because La Volpe was planning on taking Machiavelli out himself. When we get there in the nick of time, we stopped La Volpe and explained what exactly happened. Machiavelli, of course, butts into the conversation but is never made aware of his false allegations. Also, who knew Machiavelli had a comedic side to him?
It seems Jesus Christo was resurrected 3 days early.
The next cutscene is honestly my favorite in the game because of the meaning behind it. Here, let me play it out and I'll talk about it afterwards.
The wisdom of our creed is revealed through these words. We work in the dark to serve the light. We are assassins.
Claudia, we here dedicate our lives to protecting the freedom of humanity. Mario, our father, and our brother once stood around this fire, fighting off the darkness. Now, I offer the choice to you. Join us.
You have not seen eye to eye on many issues.
Niccolo!
But you are exactly what the Order needed. You have led the charge against the Templars and rebuilt this Brotherhood. Now, we must put Ezio where he belongs. At the head of the assassins. Ezio Auditore da Firenze. You will now be known as Il Mentore, the guardian of our Order and our secrets.
Where other men blindly follow the truth, remember, nothing is true. Where other men are limited by morality and law, remember, everything is permitted.
The reason I love this so much is because of the distance between Ezio and Claudia. Ever since Ezio started his journey of being an assassin, he has sort of neglected his family. So here, after the butting of heads early in the game, it's great to finally see him welcome Claudia after witnessing how capable of a person she is. She isn't a damsel in distress, she's a full-blown assassin that shows promise. Also, Ezio becoming the mentor of the Brotherhood just makes sense. We have done the literal most, almost single-handedly taking over Rome. To have him become mentor is not only symbolic of his leadership and capability, but also it shows progression to the player after playing as Ezio for the last 2 games. That said, progression is why I think he is the best character Ubisoft has ever created in the series. He isn't just a master assassin from the start who knows how to do things, he had to learn after years of training. Protagonists like Connor and Arno just didn't have this. I just want to say I like Connor, I just don't like the progression of time that the game shows. It's very much awful. So now here's when we get into the end game of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. I just want to let you guys know I'm going to kind of try my best to breeze past this end game because when you are playing Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, it's exactly what happens. It's a breeze for the last section. It's mostly on rails and linear rather than open world activities, so just keep that in your mind. We go to the Castello once more and we see Cesare in a hurry to see Rodrigo for an unknown reason. This causes Ezio to follow him and eavesdrop, but we overhear Lucrezia instead. We learn here that the Pope or Rodrigo has taken all the supply of apple shipments. That's interesting, but regardless, we also learn that she didn't know Cesare was supposed to be back, and this puts a light bulb in the player's head. Something weird's going on here. To kind of put this plainly, Cesare was meant to be poisoned by his own father via an apple. The reason being was because Cesare has become more of a liability than an actual competent military leader on the brink of taking everything down Rodrigo took years to build. It's tough love kind of thing. I guess that's a way to word it. Probably not. Anyway, after watching and listening to this cutscene, maybe I've said this before, I don't know, but I love how Rodrigo was mostly out of the picture. It makes sense. He was spared by Ezio while simultaneously already having the power of being the Pope and finding out he wasn't the conduit. He's nothing to gain anymore. He lost what he sought. He is essentially top of the food chain with no more goals, but because of Cesare's siege of Monteriggioni, everything starts to crumble now. It feels like a complete arc of Rodrigo for being a villain. But as for Lucrezia and Cesare's relationship, yeah, it's not a thing anymore because Cesare says exactly that to Lucrezia, that she's not to be his queen. This causes her to out her brother and tell Ezio where he's headed. After we catch up to the fucker, he locks the path away from the exit of the Castello. This causes us to find another way out, and we have a time limit to get to a certain location that is hiding the apple. Ezio retrieves the apple, and this is the very first time in an Assassin's Creed game, I believe, where we actively get to use the apple against enemies. Unfortunately, although badass, the apple mechanics suck to use. You have to charge up the apple to use it, but it also drains your health when you charge it up too much. And I just wish you weren't forced to use the thing. As a kid, I never remembered it being this bad. Anyways, next steps. We pretty much do the exact same thing, but intentionally now. I guess it was intentional before, but now it's like you're planning it. We have to dwindle the Borgia army to get close to Cesare. Same mechanics are here, nothing really to note, but after we have to stop Cesare from getting aid from the Cardinals. And to start off, this is a tailing mission, but it's kind of weird, at least for me in my interaction. I had to fight off guards at the same time because there was absolutely no way for me to avoid them. So no social stealth, no hiding way up in the buildings, none of that. I was just having to eat it. And upon making it to the meeting, it looks like Cesare wasn't able to get support after all. The Cardinals explain that Borgia money is tainted, so they can't be bought by them. Not to mention they have already elected an individual to take up the papacy. So it very much seems like Cesare really didn't think things through when offing his own father, which is funny. I'm always used to video game villains going through the opposite, where they take out their parents, but they then get the throne or some equivalent. But here that doesn't happen. Papacy doesn't work that way. It's a nice change of pace and I love it. Anyways, we have another face-to-face with Cesare. It's actually funny how many face-offs we have with this guy. Take a shot for how many there are, you won't be okay. Regardless, we use the apple again to take out most of his forces, but this is not the final confrontation with Cesare. We see an army behind him that Cesare sure is on his side, but no. By the order of the new pope, he is arrested for murder, betrayal, and incest. What the fuck? We then transition to a scene with Leo regarding what Cesare said, pretty much hinting at him being released. When Ezio touches the apple and finds out what Cesare is planning, but doesn't say what. He doesn't say what exactly is going on because a DLC explains this, which kind of sucks. I play this backwards compatible on the Xbox. That's why I don't have it. And I'm not going to spend money to buy something that's, like how many hours to play? I wish this was a base part of the game, considering it's an important moment for the player to understand what the hell's going on. Otherwise, there's absolutely no context as to why Cesare got released in the first place. It's a poor spot to include the DLC, but let's move on. This is the part at the beginning of the game of us standing off with Cesare for the final time. The boss fight is super easy. All you have to do is fight off some guards, push Cesare into a corner or a wall, and just spam the fuck out of the attack button until it prompts the corresponding quick time events to take off his armor. I wish it was more difficult, but this is Assassin's Creed we're talking about. Eventually we get a hold of him, and you all know what happens next. Ezio, after the confession, just drops Cesare from the wall and dies from gravity. This is a great assassination in my eyes. It's just memorable. Finally, Ezio puts the apple back where it belongs, away from the hands of men beneath the Colosseum in a vault. This brings us to Desmond, in which is trying to find the apple. Knowing this, the modern day gang make their way there, but how did they make it there? If you remember at the beginning of the video where I say there's a big triangle at the entrance that dates 1419, 1420, and 1421, this is actually Exodus 19 through 21, which, if according to Sean, I guess some way includes the 72 names of God. I'm not even going to try and explain that to you guys because I know nothing of the Bible, and yeah, I just kind of take it at face value. Anyway, that was the same year the Colosseum was built, in year 72. Therefore, that is the password to get into the vault, which is pretty cool. I have a small brain, like I said before, so this kind of flew right over my head. But getting inside the vault leads us through a whole ass couple sections of just parkour, which I love. I very much missed this since AC2. One complaint I do have here, though, is the yapping that comes from Juno when you do meet her in this parkour section. She just talks nonsense the entire time. The devs clearly wanted to convey a message here with meaning, but to the average player, they're just not going to get it or not listen because they're too focused on parkour. It was gibberish to me listening to it, so I tuned it out. I am probably going to get hate for saying that, but I don't really care. No average player is going to understand what the fuck is happening with Juno or what she is saying. Listen to this, like I don't understand it.
After, when the world became undone, we tried to pass it through the blood, tried to join you to us. You see the blue shimmer, you hear the words, but you do not know.
As soon as Desmond touches the apple, it starts to control him. He activates his hidden blade, and you all know what happens next. He stabs Lucy. At the time when this game came out, this was a genuine surprise that no one was expecting. Why was she killed? Was she a traitor? Unfortunately, we never find out until Assassin's Creed 3, which sucks, and even then, it was a throwaway line. Because of that, I have bitterness toward this decision by the writers. There was no need for it. It was forced. Unfortunately, I can't say much else on it because there just isn't much mentioned here at all anymore in the games. It's a waste, but with that, that's the end of the game. Finally, the script was very long. It's been fucking 8 months since my last video. Jesus. Although I totally forgot to do the modern day sections of exploring Monteriggioni or not being able to play the DLC, this game was fun. I would say now that I'm older, this game is not a masterpiece in gaming itself, more so a masterpiece within the confines of the franchise. As an Assassin's Creed game. This is the best in the series, with the only competition being AC2 or Black Flag. It very much makes me wish we had more standard AC games rather than the bloated RPGs nowadays. It's a short game with lots of stuff to do, which is exactly what this game needed to do. And of course, there will be stuff that wastes your time, such as collectathons or tailing missions, but it gives it that AC Brotherhood charm that you won't find anywhere else. You just get immersed in the city of Rome, taking everything in, you live out the assassin fantasy, and Ezio is an amazing character to complement, especially with the growth he has here. So yes, overall, in terms of Assassin's Creed games, this game is an A fucking plus, the pinnacle of Ubisoft games. And I think the next Assassin's Creed game I would cover, if I ever do, would be Shadows, which is coming out this fall, and I very much hope that game is going to be good. In regards to my next video, I am leaning towards Hellblade, the two games, and kind of comparing them side by side and seeing if the criticisms are very much warranted, and I just want to see with my own eyes. And as for the future of the channel, I want to make smaller videos as soon as well, so hopefully that comes to fruition. But regardless, I'm so sorry for the 8-month delay of videos. Life happens, but hopefully I'm fully back. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. But also, remember, if any of you say AC2 is better than Brotherhood, it is not. See ya!